Get some good habit patterns and live with them all of your life. You're either going to grow or you're going to die. It's create or disintegrate. There's no such thing as leveling out and staying where we are. And so if you have good habits, you're going to keep growing.
Hey guys, thank you so much for being here. A quick message before we dive in. You may be watching the show, but haven't taken a moment to click the subscribe button below. So if you've ever gained value from this show, it would mean so much to me if you click the subscribe button right now. And not only will this allow you to see these messages first, all this great content we have, you're going to get notified first when it comes out. But the bigger our subscriber base grows, the more people we can impact, and the bigger the guests we can get on this show as well. So again, thank you so much as always for your support. It means the world to me. Make sure to click the subscribe button below, and let's dive into this conversation.
When you control from the inside, like we're in control of ourselves, we're in control of our world. So it doesn't matter what happens, you figure out how to get to where you're going. The goals don't change. Sometimes the methods of getting there do, but I think probably I had great teachers. I had a half a dozen phenomenal mentors, and I think I was raised the right way. You stay in control regardless, you know?
Yeah. What would you say are some of the habits that you have that people wouldn't expect that you would have? Maybe they would expect certain things like waking up early or journaling or, getting 8 hours of sleep. But what are some habits that you do differently that maybe are unexpected in the personal growth space?
I study every day. Every day. I've studied every day now for 60 years. I started to study this book in 1961, and I read it every day. Same book, Think and Grow Rich. I have just here behind me, I've got the Laws of Success, the original ones that Napoleon Hill wrote in 1928. And then he came up with this in 1937. And the man that gave it to me, he said, if you'll study this every day, he said, you're going to have a wonderful life. And he pointed out Napoleon Hill spent his whole life studying the lives of 500 of the world's most successful people. He was mentored by Andrew Carnegie, who at the time was the wealthiest man in the world. And he said, since he spent his whole life putting this together, he said it would be a prudent move on your part if you spent the rest of your life trying to understand and apply what he was teaching. And,
right.
That just seemed to make some sense to me, and that's what I started to do, and I've never stopped.
If there was only one principle inside of Think and Grow Rich that you could only live by and only talk about, and you wouldn't be able to talk about anything else inside the book, what would that one principle be?
Persistence. He said there, he said in the book, he said there may be no heroic connotation to the word, but the quality is to the character of the human, like what carbon is to steel. See, I think the trick, Lewis, is get some good habit patterns and live with them all of your life. Because you're either going to grow or you're going to die. It's create or disintegrate. There's no such thing as leveling out and staying where we are. And some people think they can just hold it where they're at, but they can't do that. You're either going to go ahead or you're going to go backwards. It's create or disintegrate. And so if you have good habits, you're going to keep growing. Way back, I think around 1938, 39, Albert E.N. Gray worked for the Prudential, and he wrote The Common Denominator of Success. It's a great article. And he said the common denominator of success is informing the habit of doing things that failures don't like to do. And he was speaking one time, a young guy said, why do successful people like doing these things? And he said, they don't. That's why they've turned them into habits. I thought that was beautiful. He said, that's why they've turned them into habits. They don't like doing them. You see? And of course, a habit
what do you think?
Well, a habit is something we do automatically without any conscious thought. It's part of our paradigm. We're programmed.
What do you think are the three most difficult habits to develop that actually will support us for the most growth long term if we can take these habits on?
One of the things I think the most difficult is repetition of studying the same thing. I have a book here on my desk. It's in a book holder. And when I went to visit Earl Nightingale way back 1968, it was other than that, it was around 66. And I saw he had this book stand on his desk, and I asked him what it was. He said it was a book holder. And I said, why do you have it? He says, because I want to read those 2 pages every day for the next month, maybe 2 months. I said, really? The same thing. And he said, yeah. He said, then they'll become a part of me. And he said, that's really the secret of success is the repetition of an idea. You see that in sports. You play ball. I mean, it's definitely part of your game. You know, how many plays would you have in your head?
Well, a lot of different plays, but in football, there's really only like 9 different routes a receiver can run.
Yeah.
That's part of the tree of running a route. But there's so many different variations within plays that one receiver could run, and then another person could run in tandem with that.
Yeah.
So there's a massive playbook that you go through at the beginning of the season, and you've got to remember a lot of different things. But if you typically know the route you need to run and what other people are doing around you, then you can figure it out.
But it's repetition that enables you to do that, isn't it?
Over and over and over and over.
Well, you
again.
see,
the same route over and over.
That doesn't just apply to football. I think that applies to life. And if a person will really understand that, it's through repetition that you program your subjective mind. And it's your subjective mind that controls your behavior. Doesn't make sense to some people, but if they would study it and start to understand it, they would start to do it.
What's the most important thing on those 2 pages that you have open in front of you?
Most important thing here, read it to you. The lesson to be learned from the practical aviation of the present day is that of triumph of principle over precedent, of working out of an idea to its logical conclusion in spite of the accumulated testimony of all past experiences to the contrary. With such a notable example before us, can we say that it is futile to inquire whether by the same method we may not unlock still more important secrets and gain some knowledge of the unseen causes which are the back of external and visible conditions, and then by bringing these unseen causes into a better order, make practical working reality of possibilities which at present seem but fantastic dreams. They're talking about the Wright brothers. He said there was a secret they got off the ground because nobody knew how to fly, and neither did they until after they got it in the air. But he pointed out that it was principle over precedent. And we let precedent control us too often.
What's the difference between principle and precedent?
Well, precedent, you're letting something that has happened in the past control you. The principle is that there's always a better way. Doesn't matter what you're doing. Better is a beautiful word.
What's something in your life that took a long time where you were holding on to the precedent of something for a while? Maybe it was months, maybe it was years, decades, that eventually the principle finally started to fly and you had a breakthrough. Is there an area of your life you can think of?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Just as soon as you said it, yeah. You see, when I started in this, when I first got this book, I was such a loser. And I mean, in every way you look at it. I went to high school for 2 months. And I didn't quit. They kicked me out. They didn't want me there. And I was kind of happy because I didn't like it there anyway. Mm-hmm. I held dumb jobs. I never had a half-decent job. The idea that I could even get a good job never entered my mind. I had such low self-esteem. I didn't understand that at the time. I didn't even know what self-esteem was. And letting go of the fact that I didn't have a formal education, that I never had any business experience. The man that gave me the book, he said, none of that matters, Bob. That's the past. He said, let it go. Well, I had a difficult time letting that go because we're programmed that if you don't go to school, you can't get a good job. That if you're going to earn a lot of money, you've got to be really smart. Well, you see, I didn't think I was very smart, and I didn't have any formal education. That's a hard thing to let go of.
Mm-hmm.
But through the repetition of studying this over and over and over, and as he pointed out to me, Edison had grade 3. And he pointed at different people that had no formal education. And I finally made a break, left it behind. I'm not quite sure exactly when, but I let it go. Yeah.
What would you say are some deciding factors that can help someone with their self-esteem? Because you and I are very similar, where my childhood, I didn't have much confidence in myself or esteem because I was in the bottom of my class in school, because I was, had tutors and special needs classes, because I just wasn't able to understand it and comprehend that well and felt awkward and goofy in my life. What are some things you think people that in their teens or even in their 40s and 50s who don't have confidence yet, what are the things that we can be doing differently to gain confidence, to build self-esteem? Because I think this is one of the key factors of success is believing in yourself. It doesn't matter if the world believes in you if you don't believe in you.
Yeah.
What can we start to do to change that?
Well, I think a person has to start to study themselves. Most people know very little about themselves. They think they're their body. You're not a body. You have a body, and you have a marvelous mind. And when I first started to study this, I thought, studying the mind, that's for psychiatrists, psychologists, behavioral scientists. And the man that told me, he said, no, it's not. He says, that's for anybody. That's for little kids. And so I think as we start to understand something about our mind and something about our higher faculties, see, we're all programmed to live through our senses. We go by what we see, hear, smell, taste, touch. Well, I've got a little dog at home that can see, hear, smell, taste, touch. All the animals in the world, they're completely at home in their environment. They blend in. They operate by instinct, which is perfect. We had instinct removed, and we had higher faculties put in their place. And if we would study these and gain an understanding, your self-image would automatically start to improve. You have perception, the will, reason, imagination, memory, and intuition. Those 6 faculties will give you the ability to create your own environment. See, we're totally disoriented in our environment, where all the other little creatures are completely at home in theirs. And we're disoriented in ours because we can create our own, but we don't know that. School doesn't teach us that. School is more interested in the development of your intellect than in the development of awareness. Like, a person doesn't earn $100,000 a year because they want 100 a year. They earn 100 a year because they're not aware of how to earn 100 a month. Awareness is really the key. And when we become aware of who we are and what we've got working for us, marvelous things start to happen to us. And that's really what happened to me. I never went back to school. I built a very successful company. It operates all over the world. I didn't do it myself. I have a tremendous team of people. I've got just an absolute genius of a business partner, a woman who's an attorney. I mentioned to you before, you should have her on sometime. You'd be fascinated with her. She's that interesting. But it was a group of people. We've attracted a phenomenal group of people in our company. Mm-hmm. And we're operating now in 91 countries. Wow. Teaching this information. I don't know another company that teaches what we teach. Like, I think Tony Robbins has probably done more for our industry than any individual. The Secret has probably done more for it, as much as Tony has, the movie. But I don't know anybody else teaching what we're teaching. And what we're really doing is teaching people how their mind functions and how to expand their understanding of how it operates.
What are the 6 faculties again? You shared this before, which I love, and I think if people really understood this,
perception,
it could help them build their self-image.
There's perception, the will, imagination, memory, reason, and intuition.
Which one is the hardest for people to?
I don't think any of them are.
Awareness.
They're all equally valuable. You take your imagination. Think of this for a minute, Louis. Nothing is created or destroyed. Look here. Here's a little cell phone. What you can do with this almost blows your mind when you think of it.
Yeah.
Well, when I was a kid, we didn't have a phone. We didn't have a phone because we didn't have any money, for the first reason. But the second, not everybody could have a phone. We were not aware that there was an infinite number of frequencies. Today, there's, what, a zillion phones, because there's an infinite number of frequencies. This phone is on its own frequency. Yours, it's on its own frequency. If I have your number in here and I hit send, you and I connect, we're on the same frequency. It won't matter where you are. We can see each other, we can communicate because we get on the same frequency. Well, the good that we desire is already here. It's on a frequency. The way to build this has always been here. We weren't aware of it. But somebody took their imagination and went off into no place. What they were really doing is going on to a higher frequency. And if you'll stay on that frequency, you'll attract everything that you require. That's why Dr. Wernher von Braun, when President Kennedy asked him what it would take to build a rocket that would carry a man to the moon and then bring him back safely to Earth, von Braun said the will to do it. The will is the mental faculty that gives you the ability to hold one idea on the screen of your mind to the exclusion of all outside distractions. See, if you take your imagination, do it. You have goals, take your imagination, and then take yourself there, see yourself already have completed the goal. And then hold that picture with your will. When you go there with your imagination, there is a place. Whatever it is you want, you went there with your imagination, there is a place. You stay there in your imagination. You will attract everything that's required for the manifestation of that picture. You saw Brady doing it last Sunday.
This guy's a machine.
Yeah. Absolutely phenomenal.
So holding the imagination, the picture that you want in your mind, and then attracting it on the steps to get there.
Yeah. You see, we don't work toward the goal, we work from the goal. You get the goal in your mind. Our problem is we measure everything on the physical. And you look at the physical and you say, well, I haven't got it yet. If you think your conscious mind, if you get an image there of your goal, you've already got it intellectually. If you didn't have it, you couldn't share it with me, but if you have it, you can share it with me. You can share with me the idea that you've got in your mind. So you've already got it there, haven't you?
Right.
As you get emotionally involved with that idea, you've got it also on an emotional level. You've got it there. You've got it intellectually. You've got it emotionally. The only place you haven't got it is physically. Now, there's a period of time must elapse for that idea that you have intellectually and emotionally, for that idea to move into physical form. We understand.
How much time?
Pardon?
How much time does it usually take?
We don't know. We don't know. That's the only thing we don't know is the gestation period for an idea. We know what the gestation period is for wheat. We know what it is for a carrot. We know what it is for a baby. Moment of conception is about 280 days. We didn't always know these things, but we do now. We don't know what the gestation period is for a spiritual seed, and that's what an idea is. But it grows by exactly the same law. And so if we hold that idea in our mind, it must by law manifest in form. It moves into form. Now that is called the perpetual transmutation of energy. It's one of the laws of the universe.
Think of all the amazing things in life that are expressions of just you. For instance, the song you stream over and over again while you're in your 13th hour of gaming at 4 a.m. in the morning with all the lights off, trying not to wake up your roommates. Or the recommendations that you share with your friends on the top 6 comedy podcasts that are the best to listen to on your way to the gym and back. Or even your new haircut, which may or may not be an epic bowl cut from the 90s and hopefully is. Everything that makes you, you, makes all the difference. State Farm believes insurance should work the same way. Your plan, your coverage, they need to be personalized to you. And the ability to choose the plan you want by picking the options that fit you, like building your home and auto policies, is exactly what the State Farm Personal Price Plan is all about. Getting the coverage you want at an affordable price just for you. So, are you ready to make things personal? Call or go to statefarm.com today to create your State Farm Personal Price Plan. Prices vary by state. Options selected by customer, availability, and eligibility may vary.
There was something that that you shared just a moment ago that reminded me of an interview I did with Joe Dispenza recently, where he said we're really good at remembering the past and actually building a story in our mind about something traumatic that was actually way worse in our mind than it actually probably was in person. We're really good at remembering these stories. But what we need to do, he said, is to remember the future. And when he said that, it kind of triggered something different. It's like what you just shared. It's like have an idea of the future of what we want to manifest and hold on to that idea and remember the memories of the future as opposed to holding on to the memories of the past so we can move into that as opposed to be stuck in the past.
That's holding,
so
you see, that's what that is. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
and it's
holding
hard.
the memories.
Why is it so hard? Why is it hard for us to hold on to, or maybe not hold on to, but keep in our minds and imagine the idea of a greater future for us as opposed to constantly being stuck in the past? Why is that hard for so many of us? Because
we're programmed to go the other way. You know, what language do you speak?
I barely speak English.
How about Russian?
Привет, как дела? That's all I know.
Well, the point is, you were raised with the English language.
Yes.
You don't know another language. I was raised with the English language. I don't know another language. I was working with people over in Kuala Lumpur a number of years ago, and they had a little boy, 4 years old. That little boy could speak 4 languages. They thought nothing of that. There's people speak many more than 4 languages because that's the way they're raised. We're the product of our environment from the time we're born. But prior to that, genetically we're programmed. You're genetically programmed at the moment of conception. You get all mom's DNA and all dad's DNA. And God knows how far it goes back on either side. Well, that is programming. That's in our subconscious mind. And that's called a paradigm. That's what it is. It's a program in our subconscious mind. Now, here's the crazy part. You have programs in your phone or in your computer. The people that write the code for these programs are really smart when it comes to writing code. They really know what the hell they're doing. The people that wrote the code for our biocomputer had no idea what the hell they were doing. They don't. They did not. They were writing the code for my subconscious mind and for yours. That's our paradigm. And that probably controls our life to an enormous degree. It did with me until I was 26. Now, I was fortunate When I met Ray Stanford, he got me into the Think and Grow Rich book, and that led me into God knows what else. I have been working at changing that program since I was 26. I'm 86 right now. So I've been at it for a long time, and I work at it every day. Most people don't even know that they have the problem. So they stay stuck their whole life. Listen, you interview some pretty interesting people. I watched you interview here a billionaire a while ago.
Which one?
I forgot who it was. Anyway,
Ray Dalio, Charles Koch.
It was a pretty
John Paul
interesting
DeJoria,
interview anyway. But the point is, anybody can become a billionaire if that's what you want to do. You say, well, wouldn't everybody? No, everybody wouldn't. I wouldn't want to put all my energy into that. Now, does that mean I don't want money? No, hell, I earn all kinds of money. And I probably want to earn more. But that's not my focus. We are programmed to live a certain way. And rarely do we change that. Now, I change it, and I teach people to change it. But most people don't. Stop and think of how few people are really well off. 3, 4, 5% maximum, if that. And 95% are struggling. And some of these are really bright people. You've got people that have a doctorate degree in commerce and finance, and they're broke. How the hell could that happen? Well, they never learned how to earn money. They learned how to count it, invest it, and what to do with it. They never learned how to earn it. School doesn't teach us how to earn money. It's absurd when you stop and think about it.
When you were growing up, you were really poor, right?
Extremely
poor.
We had no money at Thanksgiving for food. It's part of why last year I started feeding when I was 17. I started feeding families because I was fed when I was 11. And I fed 2 families literally, and it was so moving. I said, I'm going to double it. I went to 4 and then to 8. And then it was a game to see could I reach more people. And then I started with some of my employees. And then eventually I got to 1 million people a year, then 2 million. Then I started matching my foundation with 2 million. So for 12 years, I fed 4 million people a year. And then when I was writing this book, I'm interviewing, if you can imagine, all these people start with nothing and are multi-billionaires. At the same time, Congress cut food stamps, it's called SNAP now, but it was food stamps originally, by $8 billion. Wow. So it's equivalent, to give you an idea, of every family that's being supported giving up all their meals 1 week out of every month for 12 months. Wow. So I decided I wanted to do something about it. So I got a $5 million advance for the book. I gave all the money to Feeding America. And then I said, if I want to feed 100 million people, what I got to do? So I wrote a much bigger check. And now we did 102 million people last year, but now I'm going to do 100 million again this year. And I got a plan to feed 1 billion people over the next 10 years. So it's so full circle from where I began. It's crazy. And it's an incredible privilege to be able to make a difference like that.
Why is it important to be thinking of giving and contribution in order to generate wealth? When people say that, well, I don't have much to give, I'm barely making enough to pay my rent, my food, how can I have the mindset of giving in order to build wealth? What would you say?
It's the only, you never get beyond scarcity, you got to start beyond it. You got to plant your feet. And so many people say, well, when I'm rich, I'll give some money. Right. If you won't give a dime out of a dollar, I can promise you're not going to give 10 million out of 100 million, right. Not a trillion years. So if you start, what I always believe is it transforms you. I had a group of kids that I went to, like when I was 31 years old, I was invited to this grade school in Houston, Texas. And each grade did a little mini assembly for me of how they used my stuff, at that year. And at the end, I was really emotional, and I was like, you guys asked me to come inspire you, you've inspired me. And so the 6th graders had only done it for 1 year, and I said, I'm going to sponsor your college educations. I had no idea how I was going to do it. I didn't have the money to do it, but I said, I was 31 years old. Wow. I was doing well, but not that well. And I said, I'm going to pay for your college educations, but I said, here are the rules of the game. And I just made it up while I was right there. I said, you got to keep a B average. I'll get you mentors. There's no excuse not to be above average. You got to not use drugs. You not get yourself in prison, and you got to give me 20 hours of community service a year. Wow. And the reason I did that is I don't have a college education, but I knew if I got these kids who thought they needed something to be the ones to go give something, it would change their identity, it would change their life more than college. Right. And ironically, I think we had 70 kids originally. I lost 95 kids I was going to lose. I lost the first year. It was like 30 kids. And the reason was their parents did not want them to have to do community service. They said they should be receiving, they shouldn't have to work. And it was just staggering to me. Wow. But the ones that did it, I mean, some have PhDs now, went through that process. So I really believe that the secret to living is giving, as corny as it sounds. I had an experience where I was driving on the 57 freeway, not far from here in San Gabriel Valley, and it was midnight. I was driving my 1968 Volkswagen Bug, Baja Bug, and I was been in business for, a year and a half, and I was working my guts out, and I was so frustrated because, I always say that most people overestimate what they can do in a year and they underestimate what they can do in a decade or 2 or 3, right? So I'd been working for this year and a half as hard as I could work, and nothing was working at the level I wanted, and I was so frustrated. I was mad with myself. I was mad with the environment. I was feeling overwhelmed and stressed. It's midnight. I'm exhausted. And all of a sudden, this thought hit me, and I literally pulled over on the side of the road, and I've always kept physical journals. I still have the journal to this day. And I wrote on this one whole page, "The secret to living is giving." Wow. And I sat there and I cried because I just realized my life for the last year had gotten focused on why isn't it working instead of how do I give more? And I made that shift, and it was one of the most important shifts in my entire life. And for probably a year, things started to get better. And then, you're in business, you make mistakes, I was a young kid. And I found myself all of a sudden in a 400 square foot bachelor apartment. I'd lost the progress that I'd made. And I was so broke that I wrote about this at the end of my book, because I was trying to think, how do I get this thought across to somebody? And the most seminal moment for me was I had, $21, $22, whatever it was, to my name. I'm living in a 400 square foot bachelor apartment. I'm feeling sorry for myself. I'm watching Luke and Laura on General Hospital. I mean, I was a mess. I was a total mess. And I realized I've not paid my rent, and I'm out of money. And I don't have any prospects for some new cash in the short term. How am I even going to eat? So I decided to go to this all-you-could-eat salad bar that they had around the corner of this place called El Chorrito. Still there in Marina del Rey. Yeah. And I lived in Venice, so it was about a 3-mile walk. I didn't take the car because I couldn't pay for parking, for the gas. And I walked there and I went in and I had this meal where I basically loaded up for the winter. I ate plates of food, just tacos and salads and everything else. And while I was sitting there, there was this little boy that came in. He opened the door and he was wearing this little vest, this little suit. And he, probably 9 years old, something like that, 8, 9, 10. And he held the door open and in walks behind him this beautiful woman who was clearly his mother. And so, I definitely took it in. And then he sat down, he pulled out the chair for her, and he was just so attentive to his mother. He was just so with her that honestly, I was moved. And so I finished my meal, and then I got up and I paid the bill, and it was like $6 in those days, for all you could eat salad bar, whatever it was. And so I had whatever was left, $17, $18, $19. And I walked over to this little boy before I left. And I said, hi, and I introduced myself. I said, I'm Tony, and he told me his name was Paul or whatever it was. I don't remember his name. This little boy. I said, Paul, I said, you are a class act. I said, I saw you held the door open for your woman. I saw how you pulled up the chair for her. I said, taking her out to lunch like that is really cool. And he goes, well, she's my mom. Right. And I said, that's even more cool. And I said, taking her to lunch. He goes, well, I didn't take her to lunch. He goes, I think he said he was 8 or 9. He said, I'm 9 years old. I don't have a job yet. And I said, yes, you are taking her to lunch. And I reached in my pocket and I took all the money I had left, whatever it was, $17, $18, $19, and I dropped it in front of him. I had no plan to do this. It wasn't like manufactured. I wasn't trying to impress this woman. And he looked up at me like shocked and he goes, I can't take that. And I said, sure you can. He said, how come? I said, because I'm bigger than you are, right? And he laughed like crazy and I didn't even say another word. I just walked out the door, didn't even look at his mom.
You didn't get her number, huh?
No, I didn't get her number. And I got to tell you, it was the most powerful experience of my life because I didn't walk home. I kind of flew home. And I should have been like, what is the matter with you? You have no money for food. You get the last little pennies you have left. But I had no fear. I had no scarcity. And I got home and I realized what I'd done. It was like, I have no money now. I have like no money, nothing, right? I was trying to conserve by going there, And I don't know. I just said, I've worked on a plan. I figured I'll figure this out. And the next day I got the old snail mail and came in around like noon. And I pull out this letter and there's a young man that I had loaned $1,200 to. And he had not paid me back and I was desperate for cash. So I probably called him 10 times trying to track him down, not a single response. And I was so hurt and pissed. And here's the letter from this guy saying, I'm really sorry. I know you've been trying to reach me. Wow. I've been avoiding you. And here's the money you owe, and I'm going to give you some interest as well. So I got, at that point, that was like more money than anything. And so once again, I'm sitting there, tears going down my face. I'm an emotional character. And I just thought to myself, you know, why did this happen? And I chose to believe, I don't know if it's true, but I chose to believe that it's because I let go of trying to just take care of myself. I did what was right. I didn't plan it. I did it spontaneously. I saw it. It felt right to me. I did it. And I felt no scarcity. And I can tell you, I've had plenty of tough times. You know, I have 18 companies and 12 I manage actively. I got 1,200 employees on multiple continents. We do $5 billion a year in sales across different industries now. I mean, it's a different world for me now. But since that, and I've been near bankruptcy multiple times in companies and things like that. I pulled it off always, never went bankrupt. But I faced really tough times. I never went back to that level of scarcity, not since that day. So it's a long way of saying, when you have nothing is when you need to give. You know, if you're gonna wait till you think you have something, you're never gonna have something of any size or scope. There's something inside the human psyche that when you do what's right and you get outside of yourself, there's something that'll click for you. And also, you know, tithing is a perfect example. I don't know anybody, regardless of religious belief, who's tithed 10% of their income for a decade and not prospered massively. And Sir John Templeton, who was the first billionaire investor, was the first person who said that to me. He said, Tony, I know you tithe, but he said, tithe more. He said, do more, give more. And he said, you'll receive more, just how it works. And I found it to be absolutely true.
Really? You continue to give more and more every year?
Yeah, well, I was looking, I was writing checks for $5 million. I mean, work on a book for 4 years and then give up all the profits. And then I wanted to feed more people, so I wrote another big check above that. And now I'm doing it this year. I'm going to do it for the next 10 years.
Amazing. If you had to strip them all away, you can always use one strategy or one thing to use. What would that be?
I wouldn't.
Okay.
Part of why I'm effective is because I don't buy that. I'm always looking for more strategy, because one strategy will work with one person, not with another. But philosophically, I would say that the capacity to strengthen and increase your hunger is the one common denominator amongst the most successful people. You know, Richard Branson's a good friend of mine, and Peter Guber, Steve Wynn, all these guys. They've never lost their hunger. Most people are hungry to achieve a certain amount, make a certain amount of money, and then they get comfortable and relax, or to get a certain level of fitness, and then they relax. But, you know, Richard is as driven today as when he was 16 years old starting. I mean, he's like on fire, and he's 65 years old. Warren Buffett is 85 years old. He's as driven today as when, you know, he began the journey, right? And so people that have that hunger, I believe intelligence, I love people that are wickedly smart. And I work to be wickedly smart by educating and training myself and so forth, and training my brain. But there's a lot of intelligent people can't fight their way out of a paper bag, right?
Absolutely.
Hunger is the ultimate driver, because if you're hungry, you can get the strategy, you can get the answer. If you can't model it, you can find it. So hunger, modeling would be maybe the next best skill, knowing that success leaves clues. Like, why reinvent the wheel? If someone took this plane, was Mickey's plane, who owns the Miami Heat and owns Carnival, right? I mean, you can learn so much from him. Like, Mickey, blow your mind what this man has been able to do in his life. And so why would I go learn by trial and error and maybe take 10 or 20 years when I could learn from somebody in a few weeks or a few months or a few hours, something that could save me a decade? That's what it is. That's why I read 700 books in the first 7 years, because I was like, if somebody takes 10 years of their life, they pour it into a book, and I can read that in an hour or two or three or four, why wouldn't I?
So how does someone continue to stay hungry, or rediscover what they're hungry about?
The best way is get around where it's better and things will hit you.
Say it again?
Get around where it's better and things will hit you. Who you spend time with is who you become. So, you know, when I started coaching all these billionaires, you know, there's a part of me that said, I'm as smart in certain areas as they are. I got to step my game up. It's not about the money. It's about, how can I take the invisible and make it visible? How can I find a way to add more value to other people to such an extent where economics are not a question whatsoever? And then I can take those economics and do even more where I'm not there. I look at money as portable power. I can leverage my money to do things for people even when I sleep. Now, I love doing these for people, and I work 18, 20-hour days still, but it's really nice to have the leverage of that as well.
Sure. In a few sentences, what would you say is your current vision for life? What's the vision you have, and what's the legacy that you want to leave behind?
I saw, have you seen Hamilton, the play in New York?
I hear it's incredible. Everyone's raving about it. You've seen it, right, Nick? Yeah, it's amazing.
Isn't it extraordinary?
It's amazing.
Yeah, I loved it. I thought it was might be a lot of hype, but it was as good as the promise.
Really?
There's a line in Hamilton that I thought was really interesting. It says, legacy is planting seeds in a garden that you'll never see. I thought it was really interesting. But so for me, I don't know.
What's the garden you want to create you'll never see?
Yeah. For me, it's human lives. For me, it's I love, my life is about being a blessing in the lives of the people I meet. I hope that whoever decides to watch your video, I hope something here will strike them and they can say, you know, I got to get in proximity, or I got to raise my standard, or I'm going to go master my damn money. I'm not going to dabble. I hope that it stimulates someone in a way where it becomes a blessing in their life. Yeah. And my legacy is the lives that I've touched, and my legacy is the institutions that I'm building right now that when I'm gone will continue to touch people. My foundation, the work that I'm doing with mentoring with kids.
Before the interview continues, if you feel like you're not living your most authentic life, not leaning into your purpose, and not living the life that your future self would be extremely proud of, I've written a new book called The Greatness Mindset, and I think you're gonna love this. Through powerful stories, science-backed strategies, and step-by-step guidance, The Greatness Mindset will help you overcome all the different challenges in your life to design the life of your dreams and then turn it into your reality. Make sure to click the link below in the description to get your copy today. Okay, let's get back to this video.
I mean, the ability to touch another generation, but my heartfelt prayer every day is be a blessing. And you know, it's interesting. Sometimes you're a blessing just by giving somebody a few moments, just by loving on them, just being with them. Sometimes you're being a blessing because you coach them or you intervene with them. You can be a blessing in so many ways, but that's my daily focus. And it's not what I'm going to build for the long term. It's really what am I going to do right now.
Why is that? I mean, why do you want to create that legacy?
Again, it's less about legacy than it is about doing what I'm made for while I'm here and maximizing. I want the end to have me. I want to be climbing the mountain when I die, not sliding. So to me, it's about growth and it's about giving. Those are the only things that fulfill human beings. I always tell people, if you want to be happy, it's one word: progress. If you can make progress, and if your progress is not only within yourself, but it's actually doing something of value for more than yourself, you're going to be a damn fulfilled person.
Yeah. How do you stay grounded in your personal and intimate relationships when everyone wants a piece of you? You know, you sell out events, 10, 20, 30,000 people come to your conferences, pay tens of thousands of dollars. Everyone wants to interview you. You're coaching presidents, billionaires, world-class athletes. They call you, they want you to help them break through the next level. How do you stay grounded in your marriage or with your kids or with, you know, friends?
Yeah. My mom's craziness gave me a great gift. I wanted to be a professional athlete and wanted to be a professional baseball player. And when I got cut from the junior high school team, I figured out I'm in trouble. So I decided to become a sportscaster and a sports writer. Wow. And so I took typing when I was in junior high school. I was the only boy in an all-girl shorthand class, so I could capture everything because I wanted to be the best reporter, best sportscaster. I interviewed Howard Cosell and Woody Hayes and Dodgers and Rams. I got a job working for a daily newspaper when I was 13. And then I got this huge break, which was, I got these interviews no one had, like Joe Namath when he was so famous. I got these interviews, and here in LA, KTTV Channel 11, it's now a Fox channel, they were trying to get viewership, and so they kept trying different kinds of sportscasters. They even tried Fanny Fox the stripper. And somebody watched some interviews I did and went, holy shit, this 14-year-old kid, I was about to be 15, he's brilliant, and he's getting interviews nobody else is getting, you know? So they called me up and they offered me the job to be the nightly sportscaster as I was turning 15. Wow. And I was out of my mind, like the dream I was gonna have when I was like 25 or 30 was happening, you know, I'm gonna be 15. And my mom said to me, your ego's too big, and if I let you do this, you're gonna even get bigger. And she not only would not let me take the job, she made me quit my job working for the Progress Bulletin, which was a daily newspaper in Pomona, California, doing sports. And I hated her, and I was devastated, but it created a sensitivity inside of me that along with, I think, watching athletes who would not sign a card for a kid because they were making money selling cards, would make me so angry that I said, I'm never going to be one of those people. And so I'm not. You know, I certainly have plenty of pride in what I've been able to accomplish and people I've been able to help, but I always know I'm just a guy. And while I've worked my ass off, I've also had grace in my life, you know, and I think when you achieve things, it comes from incredible obsessive focus, massive action, and figuring out how to execute and do things effectively, and it's grace.
Right.
And I never forget that that's a part of the formula for where my life is today.
Do you think people need a little bit of ego to have that kind of drive and insanity or obsession, or is it more just belief in a bigger vision?
I think, you know, ego can produce drive, but that kind of ego will make you not be fulfilled.
Yes.
And we all have it until we get a few hammers, because in the beginning, when you're young, especially a young man, I think even more so than a woman, you know, you're trying to find yourself. You're trying to prove yourself to the world, and really you're trying to prove it to yourself.
Right.
Like in the very beginning for me, I used to attack psychiatrists and psychologists because I care about people so much, and because I learned how to handle them in an hour, and they're working with someone for 7 years, and I would just go crazy. But I was also attacking them because I was also defensive because I didn't have a degree, and so I figured I'm going to be on the offense. I'm going to show them. But as I grew up, I realized, holy shit, these people care just as much as I do. Yeah. Now I've trained 100,000 therapists around the world with my partner, Chloe Madonna. So we make films of people's lives, like suicidal people who've been through hell, and you get to watch how I do it, as I do it, and then you get to see them 2 years later to know it really worked.
Right. Do you ever question choices or decisions you make today? And does everything you touch turn into what you want it to be?
No, of course not. No. Failure is part of life. I mean, the difference for me, though, is I look at failure as a stepping stone to success. It's a speed bump. I know I'm going to fail, but it's not failure if you learn something. And so, gosh, I've made so many mistakes. I've screwed so many things up, but every time I do, it becomes a way for me to explain to someone else what it takes. You know, it's like, here's what I've done. I think I have the ability to influence people because I talk about my failures. I talk about all the things that messed me up, but I show people that I didn't let it stop me, and you don't let it stop you. And I think that's really the secret in that area.
And if everything you touch was successful, you probably won't be able to relate to people as much.
No, you'll be relate, and also it'd be total bullshit, and everyone knows it's bullshit. And also you'd be bored silly. Right. I mean, think about it. If you just said, I want this and it happened, I want this and it happened, you know, people don't value what they don't fight for. You know, it's like you see kids sometimes in it, you know, your parents will say, you're not going to value this if you don't work for it. And your kid going, I'll value it, just give it to me, right? But it's true. Yeah. You know, the things we've worked the hardest for, we value the most. Yeah. So I think, you know, the purpose of a goal is not getting it anyway. The purpose of a goal, you know, is who you become. Who you become is going to make you happy or it's going to make you sad. Yeah. So I'm not looking for an effortless approach. Sure. There's no such thing.
Now I'm curious about relationships and building wealth. Yeah. Is it important or how important is it to have the right partner in a marriage or an intimate relationship in relating to building wealth? Does it matter who you choose, their mindset? Does any of that play the effect in how much you're going to make, or?
It won't affect how much you make, but it'll affect how your relationship a lot, right? Uh-huh. You know, getting on the same page is really, really important. But when my wife and I met, we both grew up very poor. But I decided that I was going to find a way to add so much value that money would never be a question for my family, and you know, it would never stop me from giving or doing or sharing anything. And I made that decision early on. So I became an earner, ways of earning. She became a negotiator, a cost manager. Her mom's number one thing is somebody comes in, she goes, sharpen your pencil. That's not a good enough deal. And so when we first met, I remember we were in New York City, and this dates me how old I am, but I remember when they first came out with digital cameras, the very first digital cameras from Sony. And it was like such a cool thing. You could take 12 pictures or whatever it was in those days. But we were down in New York City, we're in Times Square, and we went into one of those camera shops, and it was Christmas time. And I saw the camera, and I was like so excited about this camera. And I said, you know what, I'm gonna get one for my brother, my sister, my mom, and you know, I came up with, I don't know, it was like 12 cameras, and they were very expensive then. I think they were like $1,200 or $2,000 each. They were really crazy.
Now they're like $200 for the same.
Yeah, no, not even. It's a million times better. Yeah. But I went to the counter, and the guy goes, oh my God, Tony Robbins, can I take a picture with you? I'll put it on the wall. And so I said, sure. And she goes, hey, sharpen your pencil. What kind of deal are you going to give my boyfriend here?
Oh my gosh.
And I wanted to grab her by the throat and just go, what are you doing here? It's like, what are you doing? And she's like, no, what's the deal here? And he goes, oh, well, I give you 10% off. She goes, sharpen your pencil, 10%. You're not taking a picture of my boyfriend. And I'm wanting to murder her, right? And I was so mad. And so she got like 15% off and free camera cases and all this stuff. And I'm shaking my head. When we left, I was like, we had this big fight.
Wow.
Today, I just call her Squeaky. She's my squeaky girl. She wants to go to Walmart as if we'd ever need to go to Walmart, you know?
Right.
And what I do is I'm delighted by the difference. And I go, you know what a beautiful gift. I've been in relationships before where I gave everything and the people were totally unconscious with money.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, it's nice to be on the same page, but you know, one day I told my wife I was coaching someone and the person gave me a $250,000 bonus. I don't care who you are. It's mind-boggling. It was like, he didn't have to. It wasn't part of the deal. He pays me $1 million a year plus a piece of the upside. And he just said, Tony, you did so much for me. I just want to give you this additional $250,000 bonus. And it wasn't the money. It was the generosity that just knocked me off my seat. And so I called my wife and I said, honey, Paul just gave me a $250,000 bonus. I mean, it's like, he's so generous. And she goes, oh, that's nice, honey. Hey, do you know what I'm making for lunch? And I'm like,
Wow.
you know? So I used to get upset about it. Now I'm like, that's my squeaky little girl. I'm thrilled she doesn't have to think about it. I'm in charge.
Yeah.
And so I don't think your partner has to. One of you has to master it.
Right.
And you have to have some alignment.
Okay.
Right?
But you don't want them to be against you, essentially.
Well, sometimes they're going to be. We were against each other in some ways. We're having fights. But what you eventually decide is, do I want to be right or do I want to be in love?
Was there ever a moment where you didn't unconditionally love yourself? And if so, when did that shift where you stopped that and you started saying, okay, I appreciate myself because of my contribution and my service and who I am? When was that shift?
I don't think it was ever I just didn't love myself. There were times, obviously, be angry with yourself or frustrated with yourself or thinking, you know, I'm not doing enough. I mean, I can remember my birthdays, to be honest with you, probably up to my 40th birthday, including my 40th birthday. You know, you have a birthday with a 0 on it once you're over past 30, you know, 35, sometimes 5 years on it as well. People look at their life differently culturally. And I used to think it was bullshit. But sure enough, I would do it. And I remember turning 40, and I was really, really unhappy. I was like, Jesus, I've not done enough. I've not helped enough people. I helped tens of millions of people at that point already. Done all over the earth in 100 plus countries at that point. But it was still kind of stuck in my head. So I would earn the love by over-delivering, change somebody's life. Like, I don't get it because somebody says, oh, I love you, Tony. I mean, I appreciate that. Or, oh, you're the greatest. It's got to be my standard. My standard's higher than their standard for me. Right? So when I get up and someone's going to kill themselves and they're suicidal and boom, turn around and they're no longer not going to kill themselves, but they're transformed, their life is there. You know, that's when I go, okay, you know, now we've hit the center of what I'm made for. Now, you know, I deserve to feel this euphoric feeling within myself and appreciation. And even then I still know it's God coming through me. I don't have the delusion it's just me. But I think sometime after 40, I finally saw the stupidity of it. I accumulated enough that I looked at life with fresh eyes. And I can say by the time I turned 60 a year ago, I noticed it was interesting because my birthday, I didn't have an ounce of it. I was just like, you know, how could I at this stage of my life when I've had the privilege of serving so many humans in so many contexts, you know, from turning around, you know, guys going to kill themselves with PTSD to helping kids turn around to getting kids off cocaine or adults to, you know, helping people build multi-billion-dollar businesses from nothing. And when I've lived this long, I can't go by without hearing half a dozen stories a day or a dozen stories a day from people telling me how something I did changed their life. So it's not that I'm so smart now, it's just I've stacked it. By the way, though, stacking is the way you can do things. Most of us stack the negative. If you are really angry, it's not usually because of just the moment. It's that it happened again. You know, it's like if you've ever lost it or overreacted to your kid or to a friend or a business or even within yourself, it's because it happened again. We hit this 1, 2, 3 many point, and then our nervous system overreacts. But what I've learned is you can stack the good. But for example, if you go into a state of really strong anger for more than 5 minutes, your immune system is suppressed between an hour and a half to 2 hours. That's a physiological fact. But no one had done any study. I started stacking good. Like, okay, let me stack a dozen great memories, feel them, see them, experience them. And I felt this biochemical change that didn't just last a half hour, an hour, or 10 minutes. It went on for a day or two. And so I think I've learned to stack the good. So just having the experience is not enough. You got to stack the good to be able to appreciate it. But I think, just come back to the main point here from my perspective, which could be completely full, it's just my perspective. So I want to point that out. I think the more you find unconditional love for others, the easier it is to find in yourself. And I think the focus is serving and loving, and that's what will get you to the point where you start doing it. But if you want to speed it up, stack all the good you've done, you'll feel great about yourself.
I already know all the comments that are coming through. Thousands of comments tell me, but what about my family that's toxic? What about my partner who is toxic? And how do I love someone unconditionally when they don't respect me? I can't trust them. What about situations like
all
that?
those reactions are natural human reactions from ego. Because it's all about you, me, what I'm not getting, what I'm not doing, and that's why you're in pain. And so I'm not telling you like I haven't done this shit. I've done it too in the past, but it's an old pattern I don't really do anymore. And it used to affect me. Now, not a dominant one, I wouldn't have become who I become. Early in my life, I developed this belief that life is calling not to give me something, life is calling for me to deliver things, for me to bring something to life. And I felt the joy that came from not getting but giving, and I got hooked on that core pattern, and then the pattern of learning so I'd have something to give, which I know one of the things that I respect about you, Lewis, is that you have that same pattern in you. You're always trying to learn more because underneath it all, you also want to give it. You want it for
Absolutely.
you, but you want to share it, right? And so those patterns help me not be in what they're not giving. And all this language, today people don't understand the power of their language, like toxic. What the hell are you talking about? You've been reading too much social media and thinking about yourself, or somebody raised you to constantly judge everybody else. We live in a culture now where people, you're evil or you're like me. That's basically how it is, right? The whole world, everybody else is immoral unless they do what you do, think what you think, experience what you think. I mean, being a liberal, I was a liberal, right? Being a liberal growing up meant I would fight for your ability to say and believe whatever you want different than me. Today now, everybody wants everybody to think the same thing. Otherwise, they're evil, or otherwise they could hurt me. Whatever happened to sticks and stones will break your bones and words will never hurt me. We have this whole thing that words are evil. Words are action. It's bullshit. And all it does is make you incredibly weak as a human being. And you're more than that. We all are more than that. But you know what? Like a kid that's never broken their bones, definitely afraid of breaking the bone. But if you're a kid and you're rough and tumble, you broke multiple bones and they healed, you don't have any fear of it. There's so many kids that have been raised to be safe and secure every moment. Anything that's insecure or unsafe, they don't want to be a part of, including language. And what it does is make you incredibly weak and fearful. And that's why there's so many people that are abundant that are angry all the time. Because they're angry because they're not growing. So don't get me wrong. I know some people are not a good influence. I'm not denying that. I'm just saying you're more than somebody's influence unless you obsess about it every moment and make them wrong so you can make yourself feel superior morally, psychologically, or spiritually. That's bullshit. Stop the pattern. We've all done it. Catch yourself. Because if you want joy, happiness, and freedom and an extraordinary life, it will not come from blame. Never. There's no pride that comes from blame. I don't mean fake pride where you make up to feel good. I'm talking about real pride. Pride is something you earn. Like people tell me, oh, I have no self-esteem because my parents used to say this or they'd say that. I'd say that's such bullshit. I'm not saying it's bullshit they didn't say that. I said it's bullshit, that's why you don't have self-esteem. Self-esteem does not come from what people say about you. Self-esteem comes from what you experience about yourself. See, someone can tell you your whole life you're a piece of crap, and part of you can go, you're full of it, I'm gonna show you. Lots of people have done that. They never bought it. Or someone tell you you're beautiful your whole life. You go, I'm not really beautiful. So what people tell you doesn't matter at all. It's what you stack. It's what you assemble. It's what you create. It's the habit of what you put in your head. And today I don't blame you because we got a whole culture that's always blaming somebody else for something in their life. But blame is not a strategy for pride. That's why you listen to these blaming people. They're all angry all the time. Listen, if I wanted to blame, I grew up in an environment, I didn't even share it till my mom passed, and even then I didn't share. I grew up in a pretty rough environment. My mom was a beautiful soul, but when she drank alcohol and she mixed it with prescription drugs, it was a different creature, and it was a violent creature. And I have a younger brother 5 years younger and a younger sister 7 years younger. And my mom would get nuts. And I didn't want them to get hurt. So I was 5'1" in high school. She grabbed me by the hair and smashed me against the wall till I bled. Now, I never shared this, and I'm not denigrating her in any way. I only shared it like 4 or 5 years after she died because I was talking to a group of kids in New York City, all without fathers, 80% African-American, about 20% Hispanic out of their group roughly, no white kids, and I'm talking about your biography is not your destiny. And it doesn't matter what you've been through, what you decide now is what's going to control your life. What you decide each day going forward is going to decide your life. And I can look at them seeing me, and I can read their minds. This big, tall, white, rich guy is going to tell me biography doesn't matter. So I said, let me tell you my story. And I told them the whole story, way more than I'm telling you. And every one of them was crying their eyes up when they're done. I said, look where I am right now. Because I wouldn't assemble the story that my past equals my future. The past only equals your future if you live there. If you're using a rear view mirror to guide yourself, you're gonna crash. So what you've been through is horrific. What you've been through is unjust. I'm on your side. But if you hang on to it, you have no future and you have no one to blame but yourself. And these kids, to their credit, man, they just responded to the challenge because they first cried their eyes out hearing all the stories. My mom would think I was lying, and I wasn't lying. She poured liquid soap down my throat till I threw up, and I wasn't lying. So it's not the physical abuse, it's the fact that this is the person you love most that's trying to hurt you that messes with your head. So I could have been messed up for life, but I didn't. Because something inside me says, I'm responsible for this life. And part of that is because I started reading when I was 13, 14 biographies of people, the greatest people in history, and reading their lives and finding out, guess what? Their lives were far from perfect. Some of them had worse lives than I had. But when you have no reference and all you do is go online, you talk to other people, making everybody else toxic, and I'm like this, and they didn't do that, then you get to have this shitty life just like those other people. Why are they online so much? Because they don't have a life. Right? Don't be one of those. Free yourself from the chains of your past. I'm not saying your past doesn't matter, but listen, my mother, I tell people this all the time, and it's the truth. If my mother had been the mother I wanted her to be, the mother she should have been, I would not be the man I'm proud to be today. Because I had to become a practical psychologist way before any schooling, figure out when's she gonna go in a mood, how do I change her state, how do I protect her from the kids, it felt life and death, and it was to some extent. So I developed skills at such a young age. Then when I learned things, I just added to my skills, but I had a core sense of certainty that I could turn anybody around because it started with my mother. And thank God for her. And she encouraged me in so many ways. She did so many great things. And she loved me, even though it didn't look like it at times. So,
Right.
But if your parents, if the people around you said all the things you thought they should have, if they had just not been toxic, if they'd encouraged you, you wouldn't have any muscle. And right now you don't have any muscle because you're using that as the excuse, if you're thinking that. And I'm not attacking you, brothers and sisters. I'm calling to you because I know you're more. Otherwise, I'd just keep my mouth shut. You've been hypnotized by a culture of weakness. Now, having said that, I'll say one last thing. I know you haven't got other questions, but it's so important what you asked. Yes, there are people that you don't want to hang out with that will not serve you. But then move on. Don't sit there and talk about it constantly. Don't waste your time. And you say, but what if it's family, Tony? Mine was family too. Then you learn to grow. You go, they're in my life. If someone can get your goat, if someone can piss you off, if someone can make you feel less than, that's God coming to you saying, grow. You need some spiritual growth. There's got to be some change in your perception, your belief, your emotions, your spiritual look of life. So that can't happen anymore. And when it happens, like at 61, I've been through so many of those things, and I like to do things in mass. I took on big challenges, so I'd have to grow more. But then life throws them at you too. When they come, you just go, okay, it's going to have me until I grow. What needs a shift in me so that it no longer has an impact? But Jim Rohn used to say, my original teacher, he used to say, Tony, what happens if I've got a cup of coffee here? And he'd say, what if your worst enemy drops sugar in your coffee? What's going to happen? And I'd go, well, you'd have sweet coffee. And he goes, what if your best friend, your mother, your father, your brother, your sister, your loved one drops one drop of strychnine? I said, you'd be dead. He goes, that's right. Life is both sugar and strychnine, so watch your coffee. His whole thing was stand guard at the door of your brain. But some people take that and go, oh my God, you can kill me. It was a metaphor. These people are not so toxic. They're toxic because you give them energy. So if your mom's crazy and constantly criticizing you and it drives you nuts, just go, that's my mom. That's her way of showing love. And I find a new perspective. And no matter what she does, just stay in a beautiful state and love on her and think, boy, think of all that she cares and feels for, all that she's frustrated in life, or all that she's going through that's made her this way. And think, I don't have to go through this. I can love her. It's like your growth is the only limit to your happiness. If you're not happy, you're not growing in some area. And usually it's a place where you're blaming, you're pointing the finger. I don't care if it's government, don't get me wrong. People can be unfair, unjust, that's for sure happens. But you can't control that. You can't make it not happen. What you have to do is become stronger than any of it so you're free. Freedom comes from growth. Freedom does not come from control. Because control's an illusion. You can't control everybody. No matter how hard you try, you can't control what they think or feel. And not everybody's going to be fair and just. And you, my dear friends, and I have not always been fair and just. Whether we admit it or not, it's just the nature of being, a human being. But we can make the largest pattern fair and just and loving and powerful and serving and growing until it becomes the dominant thing inside you. And then you experience life as being great, not you're great. Life's great because you're living a great path.
It seems like what I'm seeing and hearing from a lot of people that this past year, everything has fallen apart for them. Their health, their relationships, their finances, their mission or purpose, and their spiritual awareness, like every area of life has been in breakdown mode for some people. Well, not everyone. Some people have had incredible lives and have stepped up to the occasion and broken through on all these things. But I'm seeing a pattern of a lot of people breaking down in many areas. Hypothetical scenario, let's say you could only focus on one thing to get you started. You only had the time and energy to focus on one of these areas. Your health, your relationships are all breaking down. Your finances, you're failing everywhere. Where should people lean into first to kind of create that foundation so that everything else can start to rise as well?
I think before you answer what to do, you got to answer why you're there. It is not because of the pandemic. I remember when 9/11 happened and people tell, oh my God, my life was destroyed because of 9/11. And there were people in the same building who turned their life around, grew spiritually, grew closer to their family, made their businesses larger, and the same building burned down, right? I know in my case, 9/11 comes, if you can imagine, I'm fortunate enough to have now more than 80 companies in all these different industries. And obviously, I've done pretty darn well by most people's standards of business and life. But my core mission is what I do for a living. It's why I'm here talking to you right now. It's getting people to be free and alive and have the level of fulfillment that they deserve to have. I know they desire, but I also believe they deserve to have. But to deserve to have it, you got to do certain things, right? And so you're not in the place of being overweight because you lost your job. So stop the bullshit. Blame. Blame is not a strategy for a meaningful life. Blame is not a strategy for greatness. So you got to resolve that, number one. And then your question was, what's the one thing to focus on if you only focus on one? I think it's smart to focus on one thing primarily. Focus on too many can be overwhelming. Other people, it's good to focus on multiple things. It depends on your personality. So I wouldn't presuppose. But then the answer would be whichever thing you're most desirous of changing, whatever thing is giving you the most pain. So if it's your relationship, I'd go full force on that. Now, in the world we're in today, you don't usually have the privilege of going, okay, I want to work on just being happy. Well, I can train you to be happy while hell's breaking loose. You can sit in this chair and be totally euphoric. But if you do that in a Western culture, people come and take your furniture, right? So you probably have to work on both your business or financial side and some personal side. I would be working on both. And to me, the way to attack that, if you're not sure which area is to start with the body. And I know you can relate to this, Louis, because you and I both share this in common. It's like, I always teach physiology first, as you well know. If you change the body, you'll change the emotions. If you change the emotions, you'll change your decisions, you'll change the quality of your life. Because the quality of your life is your emotions. It's not what you get. You can have $1 billion and commit suicide. People have done it, right? You can have beautiful relationships and commit suicide. You can have people loving you and be sad all the time. Our pattern of emotion is our home. And you have to upgrade your home. You have to train it. And one way to train it is the emotion comes from the way you move, the way you breathe, the way you speak. So if I said to your listeners, there's a depressed person behind the curtain over here, and I'll give $100,000 to their favorite charity if they had to describe their body, their posture, and they're depressed, you tell me. I'll just use you as the example. What does that person look like?
They're slunched down. They're looking down at their feet. They're not looking upward. Their shoulders are over.
Are they breathing full or shallow, do you think?
They're shallow.
Are they talking fast or slow?
They're talking, if they're depressed, they're probably talking fast because they're not calm.
Well, no, that's usually stressed. Depressed is different than stressed.
They're slow. They're probably talking low volume, slower than.
And all those physical characteristics change your biochemistry towards this feeling of being depressed. And in a depressed state, you won't do anything. When I used to be depressed, and I don't get it anymore, I just took it out of my life. I even took the language of it out of my life. Because the words you create a biochemical response. But when I did that decades ago, because I was like having those thoughts like, is there a reason to still be here? That kind of crazy shit in your head. I got out of it by using anger originally. I'd much like, sometimes if somebody's really sad or depressed, I'll make them angry. And people are like, what's he doing? He's making them angry. Because angry is much more resourceful than depressed. From anger, I can get you to laughter. I can get you to taking action. And then gradually I got where I didn't need anger. It was about growth. It was about contribution. It was about meaning. So there's like stages to go through. But to answer your question, they should work on both their business side of their life and personal, one of each. And in order for either one of those to work, you need to be in a strong emotional state. And if you start with your body, like I start every morning in my cold water, start every morning with my workout. I start every morning like feeding my mind, right? So there's certain things you got to do physically so you're strong enough to remember the truth. Because remember, fear is physical. You feel it in your throat or your gut. So is courage. Courage doesn't mean you're not afraid. It just means you're strong enough you push through in spite of the fear, right? And courage feels different in the body. So when you go lift or you go for a sprint or a strong run or you jump in that freezing water, when you push your mind to go beyond what's comfortable, you feel a strength inside you, and that strength will help you to change your body, your emotions, your relationships, whatever. But then the other thing I gotta say is model someone who's successful. Don't just do this shit by trial and error. Like, find somebody who has what you want. Ideally, maybe more than one person, 2 or 3, and figure out what are they doing different than you in their relationship? What do they believe different than you about relationship? If it's their body, what are they doing different? They're not lucky. They're doing things differently. You might be slightly biochemically different, but there's patterns there that you can see. And so instead of learning by trial and error, which can take decades you may never learn, Jim Rohn taught me success leaves clues, man. Find someone's got what you want, study what they do, every aspect of it, and then add yourself to it. And that's the pathway to speed of transformation. So now, I've done it. I'm not the only person. There's so many companies that went from worse off than they'd ever been in their history to the best off because they found a way to pivot.
One of the most important things a human being can do is press the pause button each morning while the rest of the world is asleep and ask yourself, how can I fortify my mindset? How can I insulate my heart set? How can I optimize my health set? How can I escalate my soul set, the 4 interior empires that I've introduced in the 5 a.m. club, so that when I walk out in the world, I'm creative, I'm productive, I'm compassionate, I radiate positivity, and I have resilience in case I get knocked down. And so I think one of the best ways you can do that is this 20-20-20 formula that I've been teaching to the billionaires, the NBA stars, the film icons, and many of the most successful people on the planet for, as I say, 24 years. And very high level, Lewis, the 20-20-20 formula is simply this. You get up at 5 a.m., and anyone can get up at 5 a.m. One of the gifts of a human being is neuroplasticity. We are built to change. So please, I would encourage, if we recite our excuses long enough, we actually believe they're true. We are built to change. We are built to grow. We are built to own our heroic nature. And so according to University College London, if we do any practice or habit for 66 days, we reach a point of automaticity where it becomes easier to do that new habit than not do the new habit. Once you wire in the new habit, for the first 20 minutes, 5 to 5:20, you move. Because you can release BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which promotes neurogenesis. It optimizes your brain. If you move first thing in the morning, you release serotonin, which makes you feel good. You release dopamine, which sets you up for inspiration. Second, we can get into it more deeply, but second pocket from 5:20 to 5:40 is reflect. While the rest of the world is asleep, there's such quietude in the air. This is where you can pray, you can meditate, write in a journal, sit in quietude so that you're focused and living your life and your priorities through the day. And then the final pocket of the 20-20-20 formula that I talk about in the 5 a.m. club is grow. You'll never get old if you grow. You'll never become obsolete in your business, even in a time of great volatility, if you're growing. You'll always stay happy if you grow. So 20 minutes at the end of this victory hour, that's what I call it. You spend some time listening to a podcast like Lewis Howes on the School of Greatness, a man adored by the majority of humanity. You listen to an audiobook, you read a book, you study your battle charts. And anyway, that's a really rough, general way to explain the 20-20 formula that is currently helping millions of people navigate this hard time.
Does it matter the sequencing of 20-20-20? Do you need to move first? can you meditate first? Do you grow, or is that a process that is proven scientifically?
The process has been proven in the trenches of elite performance for a long time with my clients.
Yeah.
And having said that, I would say the 20-20-20 formula is minimum viable morning routine.
Mm-hmm.
And you're a biohacker. I'm a biohacker. I'm a productivity hacker. I'm a life hacker. And so I would say, do what's right for you. It's like this whole field of personal mastery and leadership that we inhabit. I'm not one to say you must do this, because we all have different learning types. We're all on different journeys.
Mm-hmm.
Someone might be right now upgrading their spirituality so they connect with their crusade and their higher power in this time of house arrest.
Mm-hmm.
Other people are creating their masterwork right now. So I think we have to find the morning routine that works best for us.
What about people that say, you know what, I'm just a night person. I think at night, I work out at night. That's when I meditate. I strategize the next day at night, and I've tried the morning. It just doesn't work for me. What would you say to that?
I've had a lot of night owls who have.
That's a great excuse, isn't it, to be a night owl?
I've had a lot of night owls who have said, I could never be a morning person. I've had a lot of people who've said, grandma couldn't get up early, grandpa couldn't get up early, my parents couldn't get up early, I don't have early rising genes, And what I would say is, if you don't read that book you've been resisting because you don't think it's for you, you might just miss your new favorite book.
Mm.
If you fall in love with your most closely cherished beliefs and you're not open to trying new things, you might miss your trying your new favorite food. If you say, well, here's the kind of friends that I hang out with, and I'm not open to anyone else, you might miss that new friend or that new mentor who will transform the way you run your craft and live your life. And it's the same for the morning routine, the 5 a.m. club. I mean, it's just, I've had so many people read the book, run the models in the book, live the message, and achieve what they never thought they'd achieve. Yeah. And so what I would say to a night owl, or a lot of people say shift workers or whatever, I would say, give it a try. Don't just give it a try for a week, give it a try for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, the 66-day minimum, and then judge by your results.
Yeah. So it's okay to sleep in once a week or to miss the routine once in a while. It's not going to affect your overall, results or process. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah. I think, if you want to commit to the 5 a.m. club, you want to commit to a world-class morning routine, because the way you begin the day profoundly sets up the way your day unfolds. And this is not anecdotal. You get up in the morning and you run the 20-20-20 formula that I explain in the book. You will create the flow state. You will release serotonin. You will release dopamine. You will release BDNF. You will increase your metabolic rate. You will boost creativity. You will increase your willpower, all those things. I mean, we all have the ability as human beings to arrive at our own original form of greatness. Mm-hmm. We have not been schooled. We have not been taught. A lot of us have not been mentored on the mindsets, heart sets, routines, rituals that will create and allow us to live our personal genius. But, if you look at the greatest women and men who have ever graced the planet, these were so-called ordinary people who just set up their lives in such a way that their native gifts saw the light of day. It's
funny how no one ever teaches this stuff unless you had a parent or an older sibling that you were able to model and mimic. Like, oh, my dad gets up very early, or my brother gets up and does his violin or practices sport, or whatever it may be. And I want to be like that. And I want to try that. It's, we're not taught this in school.
Lewis, when I was a kid, I wasn't believed in by a lot of people. I marched to my own drum beat. I had a different way of seeing the world. I was very sensitive I was very creative, very much a dreamer in many ways. And I didn't fit in with the cool crowd. And in grade 5, I had a history teacher, and her name was Cora Greenaway. And she was one of the first people in my life who believed in me. And we all need a Cora Greenaway, and may you and I and everyone listening from around the world or watching from around the world, may we be a Cora Greenaway to someone else. And what I'm suggesting is all it takes is that one person who coincidentally shows up in our life. And maybe it's a book, maybe it's a podcast episode, to introduce us to a new frame of reference and a new way of living. It might even be, that's why I love reading so much. You know, it could be one idea in a 300-page book, and that idea opens you up to a new galaxy of possibility, and the hand that puts down the book is a fundamentally different hand. I mean, all it takes is one new insight to change the way you see the world.
That's very true.
And so, yeah, and that's why I'm on such a mission, and I've been on such a mission for 24 years to remind people of who they're meant to be. Martin Luther King Jr. said, if you have not discovered something you're willing to die for, you're not fit to live. And I believe we all need to find our mighty mission and our crusade. It doesn't have to be lofty. It could be delivering pizza by Uber Eats. It could be a teacher. It could be a lawnmower. It could be a coder. It could be a grave digger or a street sweeper. All labor has dignity, but, you know, there are no extra people on the planet. And I think, you know, that's why I appreciate the work you do so much. I mean, we do have greatness within us, and society has brainwashed us and heart-washed us into thinking that the great ones are cut from a different cloth. And it's not true. As a matter of fact, in the 5am Club, I say, you know, genius is less about genetics and much more about your daily habits.
Wow, that's true. That resonates with me, because growing up a kid that was, you know, dyslexic and still struggles with reading and writing today, and was in the special needs classes, I never thought I was going to amount to much. And I didn't have belief in myself until I found a spark and belief in myself. And then I started leaning into that gift, which was sports, and started to realize, oh, I have some vision, and I have some coordination, and I have some speed. Even though I was never the fastest or strongest, I had some height. And so I would lean into this gift that was here and see if I enjoy this gift, and see if I like this gift, and see if this brings me joy. And it did, and I continued. And then I built routines and habits around that gift and kept pursuing it as far as I could pursue it, until it was no longer a dream, or until the gift was no longer there, until I wanted to pursue other things. And I think, you know, even if whoever's listening or watching, even if you didn't think you were talented or smart enough at some point, there's something inside of you that is talent. You've just got to keep trying things and see what brings you that joy and that uniqueness. At least that's what I would say.
Well, you know, just to hitchhike off of that, Lewis, I think no one will believe in you until you believe in you. Mm-hmm. And, you know, as I'm writing this new book I'm writing, you know, I've been looking at people like J.K. Rowling, for example. I mean, everyone laughed at Harry Potter, you know, oh, no one will ever read this. And she believed in this character about a child wizard who had all of these adventures, and she was a single mother, and she was suffering, and she had no money, and she wrote the whole idea for the Harry Potter concept came to her on a delayed train ride. And then I believe in Edinburgh, she wrote the first Harry Potter, and it was rejected. And we all know this, but you know, just a gentle, respectful, loving reminder for everyone who's tuning in here, which is every visionary is initially ridiculed before they're revered. And look at Jonas Salk. Look at Elon Musk right now. I mean, look at Shakespeare. Look at Oprah. Look at Martin Luther King Jr. Look at Nelson Mandela. Look at Marie Curie. Look at Edison and Einstein. Look at Galileo. These were all ordinary people who followed their joy, who came up with a vision. And the very nature of a great vision means you're going to disrupt the status quo. So you're going to scare people. I mean, if your idea is really good for that new business or that new relationship or that new fitness routine or morning routine, it's going to scare people who are card-carrying members of the status quo. And so it's much easier to shoot the messenger than to embrace the message. And so it's much easier. It's much easier. I mean, I'll tell you completely candidly, I spent 4 years writing the 5 a.m. Club. I put my heart and my soul in the book, the models and the art that was done by this amazing artist, and every line I wanted calibrated. And, you know, people didn't understand what I was trying to do. And when the book first came out, I looked at the Amazon reviews and they were terrible.
Really? Why, you think?
Well, and I just want to say now it's one of the best-selling books in the world, and it's almost as if the tide shifted once enough people read it, and the narrative changed. It was the most interesting thing. But I've actually that really hurt when the book came out. It's like holding your baby out into the world, and you know everyone's looking at it, going, you know, just want to tell you, your baby is really
ugly,
not so pleasant to look at.
Yeah.
And you know what I would say is, J.K. Rowling, again, she said, for some to love you, some must loathe you.
Ooh.
I would say also, Bob Dylan, don't criticize what you don't understand. And so if you do anything that's disruptive, and also if you put out work that challenges people to leave their comfort zone, to wake up to their genius, if you challenge people to be more loving, to stand for love on a planet that has too much hate, if you challenge people to get up at 5 a.m. to spend 1 hour working on your mentality, purifying any toxicity within your heart set, upgrading your health and longevity, mining your spirituality in a world of selfies and dancing cat videos and a lot of superficiality and a culture of comparison. You're going to, you know, I mean, it's easier for people to shoot you down versus to embrace the message.
Mm-hmm. When we're on unusual times right now, does the 5 a.m. routine in the 2020 shift? If things are, there's an excuse, I'm tired, and then there's a shift in the world. Does the 5 a.m. club shift at this time? Do people say, you know what, let me really take it easy for a few months? Or is that an excuse for too long to get back into your vision?
There are times, for example, as an artist, when I'm writing and it's flowing and I just know this, trust your natural cycles, because your higher power, call it your instinct, call it your intuition, call it your artistry, knows what it's doing. So there are times to be productive and there are times to rest. Now, I very much believe in the 5 a.m. club and the 20-20-20 formula. I very much believe that it will create a pharmacy of mastery within your brain. It's been proven by science. You know, even just the simple idea of starting your day with some sweaty exercise. Why sweaty exercise? Is because when you sweat, it'll release the BDNF, which John Rady at Harvard calls miracle grow for the brain. But just that idea of exercising first thing in the morning will help you become more resilient, peaceful, strong during the day. So yes, do your morning routine. Yes, run the 20-20-20 formula, and then judge by results. Having said that, if you've been up at 3 a.m. because you've lost your job, because you're just picking up on the energy of the world right now where there's so much fear, you're dealing with COVID, or you have a family member you've lost as a result of the pandemic. Self-love, personal care requires that you rest, recover, and do what you need to do. And I think, that's one of the things, I say this with great respect, but when I read the books or see people saying you must be like a robot and follow a morning routine or a nightly ritual or whatever your best habits are, I believe there must be room for the hard seasons of life. Mm-hmm. And, when my heart has been broken, when I've gone through my periods of suffering, I haven't been as disciplined. I haven't been as rigorous. Mm-hmm. I've had the inopportune pizza night, And here's what I would also say is my ego, because a bad day for the ego is a great day for the soul. My ego says, Robin, you're not being productive. You're not on your A game. You're not a warrior. But you know what I've realized? I might not be creatively productive according to the definition of society during those cycles or seasons of suffering. But am I not spiritually productive? Am I not emotionally productive? Mm. I mean, when does a human being crack the shell of the ego that covers their hearts and learns the human virtues? I mean, Nelson Mandela learned how to be Nelson Mandela in his Robben Island season.
The first thing you talk about is the message, is getting clear on your message, is what I'm assuming, right?
Yeah,
As an influencer, is it important to know what your message is? And how do you find your message if you're trying to become an influencer?
Yeah, because the death of most influencers, they don't realize is their randomness.
Right.
They're just excited. I'm going to post everything, or I'm going to talk about everything. But they've never created a cohesive message that their audience goes, I get her. I understand her. It's not like you have to say the same thing over and over and over, but there has to be something that means something to you. Like, one thing I admire about what you do, buddy, is how you talk about greatness. Mm-hmm. That theme and that messaging is so tight. And honestly, over the last 3 years, when I listen to your show, I'm like, he's just dialing this in, right? You know your word choice now. You know your phrases. You know what you're saying. It's not just being repetitive on those. It's just, that's who you are. And that integrity of your message is being shown. So you better be intentional about the kind of person you're trying to become. Because most people think about message, they go, oh, so I need to have a mission statement, Brandon? I'm like, no. You are the message. The integrity of who you are and how you show up energetically and how you treat other people, that's the message.
The role model mentality.
Yes.
You become the role model of your message.
That's it.
Yeah,
because that's what integrity is. It's like, people are going to watch you and go, are you congruent here and there? And if you're not, it's like that message feels funny to them. But you and I both know a lot of influencers, they've never done any deep introspection. Yeah. They've put on 50 different clothes and beautiful Instagram things, but they don't know who they are.
Yeah. Or they got the mental health challenge, which is what we'll talk about later.
Yeah.
But the message, getting clear on your message and kind of the theme of your brand, the theme of your influence, I think is key.
Yeah.
And this cannot, listen, it doesn't mean you have to be a perfect human being. You're going to make mistakes, you're going to learn, you're going to grow, but it's like trying to be congruent with your message consistently. For you, it's high performance habits. For your book, you talk about it in your podcast, you talk about it in your events, you live that and you showcase that.
Yeah.
For me, with greatness, it's kind of like, what are the core themes of living a great life and business, health, relationships, and everything involved. And it's trying to do the best to live that all the time and talk about it consistently.
Yeah. So including the failures.
Absolutely.
Like, that's part of it.
Showcasing the failures. I think when influencers showcase their mistakes and failures, it makes them more real, more likable.
Yeah. That's why everyone likes me, because I'm a hot mess all the time.
Exactly. So you got to get clear on the message first. Do you have a mechanism for, it's like, well, I kind of like everything. Like, how do you figure out what your message is? Is there a process, or just like some journaling that you could share with people?
Yeah. I mean, first sitting down and saying, what do you want to be a role model on? Mm-hmm. Like, if you want to be a role model, what is it about? And how does that translate into a person's real life? Like, what would you say to an actual person to help them or inspire them? And you just have to start writing those words. Like, what would I say? Like, what would I say? It's that old thing of like, what if you could put a message on a billboard, or if something was written on your tombstone, like what are those things? Yeah. For me, like a lot of people know, it's like live, love, and matter. Yeah. Because when I faced my death as a 19-year-old kid, I was like, oh, I learned I really want to live life. I learned that because I was a heartbroken kid, I wanted to love again and feel my heart again. I learned that life is super short, so you better make your difference. So Live, Love, and Matter became central to everything I did for 15 years. Like every message revolved around that because that was me and that was a unique experience I had. I think a lot of people have to go and dig down deep into their experiences of their life and say, what were some of the gifts of the lessons that I learned? So some of the awful things that happened to us or the challenging things, those struggles, there's a story there, and that story can reveal some lessons or things that you might be a role model to for people. And it doesn't have to be so finite that it's like, this is it forever. Because you'll keep evolving, you'll keep learning. But there's hints there, and you can go dig into your past to find some of those hints. You can also just ask, well, what are the passions that I really feel in my heart that I just want to communicate right now? Some people it's like, well, that's fashion for them. Some people it's health for them.
Being a mom.
Being a mom, being an educator, just showing everyday life. That's fine because ultimately, again, you are the message. So the most important thing isn't to figure out like, what am I going to say? It's the most important thing is who are you?
Who are you is the key.
Dig deep, man.
Asking that question.
Yes. Who are you? One of the things we do is I ask people, come up with 3 words that describe the best of who you are.
That's
like
great.
these are aspirational words. If you could think of like 3 words when I'm at my best, these 3 words really define me.
Yeah.
And then I say, okay, now figure out what are 3 words that really describe the best of you when you're with other people. Like how do you treat them? And then what I have them do is I literally have them program in their phone as an alarm.
Clock, right? Yeah, I have that in my alarm. Still 8:30.
You still do?
Yeah. Which I need to change to like 6:30, but it's like an 8:30.
That's
AM
it.
reminder.
Mine's still in here. I've been doing this for whatever. There was my 9 a.m. Dynamic, bold, and confident, and that was for today because I was like, I'm usually a little more reserved in Lewis's interviews because he's the man. Be a little more bold and confident.
I have loving, giving, achiever.
That's it.
Loving, giving, achiever.
See?
So I could probably change that too. Yeah.
Yeah. So I switch mine every week, but.
So 3 words that you would describe as yourself, and then 3 words that you would want other people to describe you as, or that you would describe yourself.
Yeah. So 3 words you describe yourself as, like the best of who you are.
Yeah.
And that's just you, like your identity. And then the other one is more like relationships. Like 3 words to describe how you are with other people. For example, my word there, bold. Like that can describe me as a person, how I think, but I wouldn't want you to ever go, well, Brendan, when he's with me, he's real bold. That's different. Like how you are with other people should have a certain definition and description, and how you are by yourself should have a certain, and that's how you start to get to know yourself. Like, oh, I'm like this as a person, and with other people, I'm like this as a person. And
it's like shaping your own internal identity of your qualities.
Yeah.
And reminding yourself of who you are.
Labeling yourself a little bit in a positive way.
Yeah.
Because most people, they take the labels the world gave them. Oh, you're just the athlete, Lewis.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? If you just took that and that was all you ever owned and you never explored beyond that, we wouldn't be here.
That's true.
Right? We're here because you explored who am I, and you are still doing that. So am I. Like it's not like it's a thing that stops, but people want to see you working that through.
I think like 15, 20 years ago, like in my teens, I used to say like, man, you suck to myself all the time.
Yeah.
Like you're a loser, you suck, I hate you. I'd say these words to myself, like you're never gonna do anything better than this person, or you're never gonna be enough, whatever. I would say these things internally.
Yeah.
And those start to shape you as well.
Yeah.
And they start to shape how you treat other people, your reactions, and how you treat yourself.
That's right.
So I think this is a very powerful, simple exercise that we've been doing for so many years now that we kind of forget the power of this.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you made this reminder because I never say those things to myself anymore. It's always like, you're kind, you're loving, you're passionate, you're wise, you're giving, you're caring. I say these things all the time. I never even say anything negative.
Yeah, and you give yourself patience on the days you're not.
Absolutely.
And that's a hard thing for people because they're supposed to be kind, and one day they're a jerk, and then they're I'm a jerk, and they go back to that old bad label. But it's like what your audience wants to see if you're an influencer is you working through the development of you. They want to be on that journey with you and see like, oh, I see him or her becoming. Because they're willing to ask the hard questions about themselves and explore who they are. Because if you can't be an influencer and not explore who you are.
Yeah.
I mean, even the great presidents of our time were always in motion of exploring who they are. The great business people. It's not like Elon Musk has been exactly Elon Musk exactly 10 years ago as he is today. It's like you're seeing this evolution, this change, and sometimes it's a hot mess, and other times you're like, oh. This person's, people want to be on the journey with you as you're exploring who you are. And if you're not exploring who you are, you're not growing. And if you're not growing, the audience is not growing.
It starts to die.
They're not interested.
So true. So get clear on your message, figure out your 3 words. And that's a great start there. Now, the next thing is figuring out your market.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that? What is a market?
Yeah. Well, one, I don't like that term, especially for guys like you and me who we do like so many walks of life, listen to your show and my show.
Multiple industries and markets.
Yeah, I look at like, how you look at the analytics of like when I look at like the Brendan Show podcast, it's like, holy crap. All these countries, all these, like you can't, if you come to our events, I've gone to your events too, you can't do a demographic run of that audience.
It's not like all 32-year-old male sales executives in the car industry.
That's the old world of marketing. You had to speak to one specific person. What people don't understand if they've never studied the history of marketing is that the reason that niche marketing came out, that concept of just identifying one person to talk to, and some people now say, identify your customer avatar. I'm like, no, you're identifying avatars. It's plural. Because the reason that came so popular in marketing back in the day was only for one reason, because in the 20s, sort of the golden age of marketing and advertising, you only had so much budget to run a certain ad on one platform. So you really had to get super niche and narrow. Now, we're able to reach a couple billion people. Now we're able to have broader conversations. So what you want to do with your market is try to understand, what are the aspirations of the people I want to serve looking like? It's about the aspirations, not about the demographic.
Yes, it's the mindset.
Yes.
And I always talk about that. Like for me, School of Greatness is not about, the 32-year-old mom with 2 kids.
Right.
It's more of a mindset and a mentality.
Yeah.
And that's what we look for. Someone with a growth mindset.
There you go.
I call them conscious achievers.
Yeah.
People who are looking to achieve in their life, but in a conscious way.
Yeah.
They want to grow personally and they want to impact people around them.
I love that.
If they have that mentality, then you're a part of the community.
Yeah.
And that's who I try to speak to.
Yeah.
But it could be a 16-year-old or a 60-year-old.
Yeah.
It could be people from all over the world, but it's like this conscious, achieving mentality.
I love that.
And that's what I focus on.
I love that. You got to have that. Yeah, you got to have that. And what I tell people all the time is like, if you're not out with your students, your fans, your followers, and you're not really getting to know them, at some point you're going to lose that audience because you just don't know them.
It's true.
You need to know what's in their heart, not their age. You know it in their heart, not every part of their background or where they were raised and everything else like that. That kind of market analysis is overdone, and corporations love to pay for that. And when they do deals with me, they're always like, "Tell me everything about your people," and I'm like, they have the aspiration to go to the next level.
That's it.
For me, that's it. That is my market. I have always, for the last 15 years, marketed and talked to people who were in that transition moment of their life and ready to go to the next level. I didn't speak to those who were just starting. That wasn't my audience. Who didn't know what person. I always went high end in the sense of like, I speak to people who are ready to go to the next level. They've already got one level of, security or like sense of themselves or success. And now they're like, you know what? Next level time. So they're like in that phase where like gearing up, Yeah. They're like, here we go. They're not kind of like, oh, I don't feel motivated. I don't get, that wasn't my audience. My market was an aspiration to go to the next level, and I was focused on that. And it's what made, for me, with our brands, like, how did you do all those 7-figure launches, 28 of them? I spoke to that aspiration specifically, so people knew, this is for me.
So
this is for me.
So in like a 20 seconds, say you were doing a video to attract the aspirational mindset or the heart set of this individual.
Yeah.
And you have a video that spreads out to the world, and you know it's going to attract a certain type of person to come into your offering.
Yeah.
What would you say in 15, 20 seconds, a few key words that would be leading people into kind of where you wanted them to go? So it was the right kind of mindset.
Yeah.
What would you say?
You're somebody who you feel like you've tried everything. You've been at this for years. You don't feel like you've gotten that breakthrough just yet. You're doing good, but there's too many days you don't feel as motivated or as driven as you really want to go to the next level. And you feel like you need some more empowerment to really achieve that next level. Not kind of like just get inspired or motivated, because that can come and go, but rather you're looking for real tactical solutions that will help you earn more, that will help you become more, that will show you like step by step. This is how you reach that next level. And not from my opinion, it's that I've spent 15 years researching the highest performing people on the planet.
Right.
What they do is very specific. And if you're honest, you haven't been very specific. You've been random. And because you're good, you already have some success, you're able to just go through the motions.
Yeah.
But going through the motions is the killer of the high performer.
It's true.
Right? Because
good to great, yeah.
Yes, you can be good, but that's not going to take you to the next level. So I'm going to assume you're already good, but you sense inside that there's a restlessness and there's a struggle there that you don't know what that breakthrough feels like. But you're very aware there's next level. You have a dream, you have something you want to achieve. So let's just dial in your motivation, let's dial in your habits, but let's give you the discipline and the willpower to make it happen.
And that's why you need to go to Influencer 2019.
You know,
he's got it just dialed in. He's got the message dialed in, the market, the message dialed in.
I'm fired up being around you all the time, brother, because we both really believe that we can help people do that, because that's where our footsteps have been for 15 years to help people do this.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
So get clear on your message, the market. Then there's a method. What does the method mean?
I always love to talk about method with people.
It's like method acting.
Yeah. No, for real. It's like Picasso had a method. Van Gogh had a method. Beethoven had a method. Like, they were thoughtful about the art of what they did. Mm-hmm. And influencers need to think about that. Like, you thought about, like, I want a podcast that's going to be like this.
Exactly.
And as you hone that in over the years, the podcast got better.
Yeah.
Because you brought more intention to the method, right?
That's true.
Actors who just show up and kind of read the words, not good. But the greats, they're so thoughtful about the turn of the phrase and how they're going to do this, right? The great musician, the great artist, they obsess about the actual art of the thing. Because, again, just showing up, especially when you're good, it's going to limit you. Now you want to be more intentional and say, what is this? It's like I've shared with you before, having the blessing of working with Oprah, she starts meetings by asking, what's our intention here? Like, greatness requires a lot of intention.
It does. It doesn't just happen by showing up.
Yeah.
You got to get clear on the results and the experience you want to create.
Yeah, you see a really high achieving influencer do a photo shoot, way different than somebody who's not high achieving.
Yeah.
The intention and the placement of things, of where this goes and how this
closing
works,
everything.
That's method. That's like bringing art to the method. Like when I wrote Motivation Manifesto, I was like, okay, I'm going to write a book that's never been written before in its tone that hasn't been seen in hundreds of years. I was like, how do I figure that? I'm like, it was an art project.
Yeah.
If what you are doing as an influencer doesn't feel like an art project, you're just simply doing it wrong. And you're going to burn out and you're going to quit.
So give me examples of methods for someone like a Rachel Hollis and a Jay Shetty.
Yeah.
What's like their method from your point of view?
Yeah, Jay's super intentional about his videos. Like I sit them down and we did an influencer day with him, and I asked him like 40 questions. How do you do these videos? He's intentional from when the video is changing, to the tone of the music and when it's lifting, to when other people appear in the video versus just him. He's intentional about the length of the video. He's intentional about what day the video is posted.
Yeah.
He's made
time, everything.
Because what most people do, slop it together, throw it up. He's like really try to dial it down to a very specific process that draws emotion from people. And so that's a method.
Yep.
You know.
And his thing is viral video.
Yes.
It's artistic viral video that creates an emotional feeling for someone. It's not just like this scientific videos.
Yeah.
Or how-to videos necessarily.
Yes.
It's like an emotional feeling that people want to watch and share.
And you've thought they were that too, as well. That's why you've got, hundreds of millions of views.
Absolutely.
And it's just like, versus guys like me who sometimes just put up a very inspiring video, but we didn't put the B-roll in. We didn't put the music go up and down. We didn't clip it at the right spot. So that's
a different method.
Same, exactly. Different method, different results.
Yeah.
And to those who put more into the method, they win. They're the better the artists. Like an influencer has to understand you are in the art of impacting people. Mm-hmm. And if you're in the art of impacting people, you better focus on the art as much as the impact. You know what I'm saying?
That's really good.
Yeah.
What about someone like a Rachel Hollis? Someone who's skyrocketed over the last year and a half that seemed like came from nowhere.
Yeah.
Right? We know that she's been working for 7 years, written 5 or 6 books, and had a successful blog in a different space, but just boom, shot up, one of the biggest selling books of the year, behind I think Michelle Obama.
Yeah.
Kind of felt like overnight.
Yeah.
Like this influencer with millions of followers and huge business within a year, quickly, documentary, books now.
She's great.
What would be the method for someone like that you see? Or is it kind of more...
No, it starts with being intentional about the art and what you're doing.
About your message.
Yeah, she still sits down every single morning. She writes down, here's what my dreams, here's what my goal is, or here's what I'm going to do. She came out to this before everything really, really took off. She came out to the house, and we sat down together. And it was so clear. She was asking me questions about where her career could go that were really thoughtful. And people don't see that all the time because she might just post, here's what I'm wearing today, or here's a picture of the kids. But she's really thoughtful about where her career is going, and she's super thoughtful about talking to the women in her market from a place that she's been there. Like, she gets it. She knows that woman, she knows that person's experience, and she's going to verbalize that. And she's very thoughtful about the words she uses to connect. Because the part of the biggest method in influencing is being very artful about your messaging.
It's true.
She doesn't say a lot of things over here, but she says these things over here all the time.
Over and over again. It's like a formula. It's like every 6 posts you see this, another kid photo that's talking about this something different.
Yeah. So she's always in the audience's mind and using the words they use and describing the feelings they have. She's also, part of her method, her real art, is her vulnerability.
Yeah.
To say, start her book, I peed my pants. Yeah. Like, literally. She this person dumped me. I hated myself because I was like this.
I almost got divorced.
Yes. That takes a lot of body intention to go, I'm going to reveal some things here that I'm not comfortable with, just like you did with Mask of Masculinity. That was guts. That took a lot of art versus just saying, hey, here's a let me tell you guys this. It's like, no, I'm going to reveal this story and this vulnerability. That's art. And what people don't realize is the greatest artists of all time were incredibly vulnerable. Yeah. As much as they were telling you what to do. We love Bob Dylan, not just because he told us what to do and he, made us want to throw our hands in the air and like march or get fired up. It was the vulnerability of the journey. Yeah, that's why we love Kerouac. That's why we love Emerson. That's why we love some of the real greats, is because they were thoughtful about sharing insight into their pain. Because people, the influencers who fail always are bright and shiny. And they don't realize a lot of art does come from pain. And a lot of the messages that actually does help people, is acknowledging things. Like, for years, I didn't want to tell people that at the beginning of my career I went bankrupt. I told them how much I struggled and it was hard and I had to get out of my own way and all these other things, but I didn't want to use the word bankrupt. I was like, oh God, because that was just like, here I am teaching people stuff but I had this huge struggle. And I was like, no. And one day I just said, that just happened. So let me describe what had happened and not be afraid of it. I wouldn't know from that moment we would go on to build, everything that we built by any means, but I wanted to avoid that because it was so painful to me. And at some point, real artists connect to the pain and they give it voice, verbalization, or symbols. Yeah.
The greatest songs are not just like fairy tales. There might be a beautiful ending, but it's also like some darkness and struggle in there as well. Yeah. And that's what you can do in your business or as an influencer. What would you know what
the greatest art there always comes down to being, almost always the method, is you learning to fight for who you are. Ooh. Because right now, you think about the biggest memes that we see right now, it's always like, don't let them judge you, don't let them tell you down, don't let them tear you down, don't let them hate on you, don't let them stop you. And that what's central to that, the architecture of that actual messaging is live your life, show your truth, be who you really are, not what everyone else expects you to be. And that's what always comes back to the message again, you are the message. And if you keep dampening yourself based on what other people tell you to be or how you're supposed to be, then all of a sudden one day you wake up unfulfilled. And you wake up unfulfilled, guess what? Not easy to be motivated. Not easy to be motivated, then guess what? You're not going to create the content, the curriculum, the products, the programs, the business. Because, some people look at us sometimes and they're like, oh, well, he just does a podcast. They have no idea you have this empire behind that. Right? People go, oh, Brendan does, what is he? He does some email. He was big on Facebook with quotes. Okay. And they have no idea of a huge, we've 200 employees across my brands. It's like the impact that we've had, let alone just what I do. It's all the other people we've mentored and, inspired. That can't come from a place of me being unfulfilled. That's right. I have to work so hard to be a happy, fulfilled, motivated, disciplined man so that I can have that perpetuate across the brands and the business.
That's it. Yeah. What would you say is your method then? And has it changed over the last 10 years? Yeah. Is it okay to change your method?
Yeah, I think it always does. I mean, no actor does a movie the same way. And if they do, you're tired of them. Right. I think it's a tremendous amount of diligence in sitting down and asking, what is it I want to convey here and how do I want to do it in a way that's unique to me and different in the market? So what do I want to convey? How is it unique to me? How is it different than the market? And so like my greatest art piece so far was Motivation Manifesto. You read that and you're like, I've never read a book like this my entire life.
Yeah.
It's written like it's, from the founding fathers of our country kind of tone. It reads a little like the 1700s, but it punches you in the face every page.
To be or not to be.
Yeah. It's like such a hard, it's like you read it and you're like, whoa, I really got to focus on these words here. This guy, there's no fat in that entire book. Mm-hmm. There's not one word you could take out. It's just like I worked so diligently on that. And I think what that was an evolution of me saying, I don't want to just create books, to sell books, to make money, and to inspire people in this specific way. I want to be challenged in my own artistic process.
Yep.
I want to push the boundaries of what my art can be. I don't know how to write a book like this. It's not even my tone. I'm going to figure it out.
Yeah.
High Performance Habits. I've never done a full-scale psychological science research-based book. And I was like,
You went deep in that, like 2 years of research.
3
years of research.
3 years of pretty much every day of my life.
You didn't talk to anyone. You were just like in the hole.
Yeah, in the hole. The largest study ever done on high performers, even to this day, no one's beat it, right? 2 million plus data points, people from 190 countries. We had all these academics looking at my research, trying to make sure that we got our correlations right and our variables right and all these other things. Like, I didn't know how to do that.
Yeah.
But that was an evolution of me getting better and stronger and more nuanced at what I was doing.
Wow.
And I'm telling people, you're in trouble if you keep going through the motions.
Yes.
The more you go through the motions, the more you get miserable about the work. The more you're intentional and you challenge yourself to push your boundaries, the more you'll stay alive.
I don't think you get to be a champion. I think you need to become a champion since day one. And prepare, work, give, pay prices, sacrifice since day one.